Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your Thursday Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Trying to give a little more energy this morning. I've been up since 5 a.m. We're going to get going. I'm excited. Today's going to be a great day. Let's go.
So I have a question
like that, and they're not going to be able to keep up. Like the people who listen at 1.5 speed are going to have.
That was like chipmunk moment right
Tommy
there.
Speed, yeah. Apparently. So I have a bone to pick because why, when you're up, you look so awake, but when I work late, everyone's like, "Oh, you look so tired," kind of thing. So
dude, you got blasted in our last show. People were like, "Tommy,
did you even?"
Literally, I didn't shave. I didn't shave, and everyone was like, "Wow, he looks like a mess."
You know what, Tommy, your 5 a.m. shadow. When if you don't shave in the morning, like it just makes you look a little tired.
Some of us just clean up better than others, Tommy.
Maybe I should shave my head. It probably works for you guys.
I think you should grow the beard. I think you should grow out the beard. I think it's a fad now. I'm trying to catch up to Seth now. He's got the amazing beard, and so I'm catching up, and we'll see where this goes.
Not a full beard with Seth. You can't count that a beard. That's a goatee.
It's a goatee.
Well, it's facial hair. Go with it. Tommy, you could have one of these in like 3 days.
Yeah, but that like span from getting from now to you,
yeah,
it doesn't look great.
That's a weekend. That's a weekend for you.
It looks
like, so. Start today. And by Tuesday,
you'll be fine.
You can show us what bearded Tommy looks like.
Hey, Tommy, if you even show up with like one of those Santa Claus beards, you just go get one that's just black and just put it on. Like, hey guys, here I am. I recruited over the weekend.
The problem is you don't even know if I'm talking. You'll just hear the voice, but you won't see a mouth moving.
You'll just see a mustache moving.
Yeah. I have another bone to pick before we begin.
All right, let's pick some bones.
My favorite tool like one of the things I used to love was Product Hunt. You've ever heard of it?
Never heard of it.
Product Hunt.
Yeah. So it's basically like a curated thing where it's kind of like a Reddit, but for like software tools. It's pretty cool. Like, and it used to be like all these new features or like if you wanted to follow things in iOS or things on the web or like development stuff.
Interesting.
It's been around for a while, and it's one of those things that you just kind of can browse and go, "Oh, I'll try that. Oh, I'll try that." A lot of honestly, the products I use now came from looking at Product Hunt.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But now it's literally everything on it is something AI. And it's kind of like, yeah. So like, I mean, if you looked at the last 100 products, 95 of them are like Frank AI, writing AI, read AI, or they're all just
podcast AI. Oh, I'll use that one. Do your whole podcast without having real people here.
It's basically like listen to a pod. Yeah.
When do we get deepfake? That's what I need. What's that we need to know now? When does our deepfake happen?
I don't know, but it's probably not for a while. But there's not
only important people get deepfaked.
Exactly. Yeah,
we're not an Elon Musk here. We can't sell you crypto for free by giving us your wallet number or whatever that is. I see them every other YouTube short I see these days is like Elon Musk announcing there's more free crypto being given if you just give them your credit card number and they'll just give it to you. I'm like, this sounds suspicious.
Yeah. But I'm realizing more, like we've talked about the AI, and like I still stand by it's an amazing element and part of your toolbox. But I think what's happening is it's becoming like the latest fad. It's like, oh, well, this will solve every problem if I just, because they're literally like, hey, write your emails with AI. Hey, do this with AI. It's like, I think we're going to go a bit overboard with the amount of tooling that's going to happen with AI.
This is the trough of disillusionment curve. We are on
we're on the hype right now.
We're on the hype trail right now. So this is funny because we talked about this a long time ago. Like this is exactly where we are. AI came out, people had a couple wow moments. Now everyone's like, "Oh, this is amazing." And so now we're on the hype train. Everything's getting super exciting and we're going to hit the peak of whatever that thing is, and then we're going to hit, okay, this really didn't work, and the AI just hacked everyone's credit card in North America, and they're going to be like, "Oops, that was a bad idea." And then we're going to have shut everything down that's AI.
Realize it doesn't do
that trough of disillusionment might be an actual like downtrend of horrible.
It is interesting that Microsoft just invested in
horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah, horrible. Well, it is interesting that literally Microsoft's investing in all, like, do you saw the thing with Azure now? Azure Synapse? It's
Azure
literally
Synapse.
They just announced something with OpenAI. Like it's built into Azure Synapse.
Yeah.
So, but it's open.
On that one,
Like,
I'm not really sure why you need AI for some reason. I can't quite.
yeah.
But again, it's this thing where like there's so many utility functions. Like if you're writing, anytime you're writing code, the fact that ChatGPT does or the OpenAI or whatever or the thing, the fact that it does such a good job helping
I
you
know.
build decent code. I mean, that's
It's really great.
every code editor needs to have this because it will auto complete your code based on what you've partially
Yeah.
said. It's incredible. It's gonna again. I'm becoming more like it's not that I was skeptical before, but I'm just trying to figure out how can I integrate this new technology into every workload I do. Simple things.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
literally writing a Twitter post. I'm like, I should go to ChatGPT first and type my thing in there and see what it says. It's incredible. I'm super loving it.
I think with all the tools, it's all about. It's not that it's going to solve all your problems, and I think it's literally like, how can it be just part of the toolbox? When does it apply and when does it not? And like, yeah, like I'm not going to use it for Twitter, like for social media, because I like my own language, so to speak, with that. But yeah, but with the coding, oh yeah, I have a subscription, man.
I would say, like, for first implementations, it has the potential to speed up a lot of what we do, right? Depending on how it's implemented. So, I mean, that's why I think the hype is there, because not getting into like job replacement or things like that, but I'm just saying in general, like with tools that are plugged in like that, there's a lot of runway in which that could really be helpful in many, many different areas. So
just you wait till there's a upload. Here's my PBX file. Can you let me know?
Yeah. Build the best looking visualization ever using Power BI themes generator.
Cha-ching. So in other intros, we'll do a quick little run around here. So quick announcement for everyone who's listening to podcasts. You probably already know this one, but the Power BI tips theme generator has gone through a major update. We have been really working hard behind the scenes to make it like the best tool everywhere known to man. So we have been working incredibly hard to make it easier to use, adding more features, and we have just recently released this February a full-blown every property, every single thing that you could think of for visuals is now inside the tool, and we're quickly trying to add more features and properties around the fields pane or the filter pane, the page information, the buttons, the text box, all these other like kind of ancillary things that go along with a theme file, but they're not necessarily easily discoverable. So we're adding those features very quickly, and very soon we'll have everything you can think of inside the theme file. And we're also allowing you to save your themes into the tool, so that way you can do all this work, build all these properties, and come back to it after you've made your changes and properties. So if you're working on multiple theme files, if you're building a corporate theme file, it's great to use that because you can build your versions of those theme files and then go back and revisit them and update the properties as needed as you want to build more visuals. More to come. It's getting better and better. Go visit themes.PowerBI.tips if you want to learn more or go play with the tool. There's a couple major conferences coming up that is going to be super fun. Very excited to go to some of these. The next conference that you're going to see on your radar will be the Power BI Global Summit. And that's going to be from March 6th to the 10th. And it's an online, and there's going to be sessions running in 5-hour increments. So that way there'll be like a morning session and an evening session. So everyone in the world can have and attend all the sessions that are there. So huge conference. I think well over 130 speakers, really rich content. I'm very excited to kind of tap into this one and listen and hear what's going on there. So that's going to be an incredible conference. Highly recommend going to it. You can visit globalpowerbisummit.com to go check it out. And the other major conference that's coming up that I've heard many good things about is SQL Bits. SQL Bits will be having their conference at ICC Wales in March 14th through 18th. You can use a discount code of PowerBI.tips 5 to get 5% off all your tickets to go to the SQL Bits conference. I'd love to see you there. Tommy will be there. I'll be there. And we'll all be speaking at the Global Power BI Summit, so we can see you online there as well. With that, I think we're all out of intros and stuff. Let's talk about the main link or the main topic for today. I don't remember who came up with this one. Tommy, did you find this article?
I think this was part of our conversation on last Thursday. And I think this is one of the things that came up as our conversation went on.
So the article, and I'll put the article here in the chat window. The article is all about how do you increase your data literacy inside your company. And I think data literacy in general is becoming quite a hot topic. So this is, I'll put that in the chat window. Tommy, give me kind of an introduction. Like, what are we thinking here for the topic today? And maybe just give me a little once over on your perspective on data literacy.
Well, I think a big part of the article too is we've talked so much about analyzing data and letting people try to understand their data. Honestly, all those conversations, really the term we should have been using is data literacy. And it's just when you think if you're a literate person when it comes to reading a book, I can read, I can understand what it means, and then I can write about it. And we all have that obviously ability. And so taking this into the data realm is very much in the same concept. And I think we all consider ourselves data literate, but again, it goes to I can obviously read data. Most of us probably can, but can we also analyze and can we argue about it? But more importantly, can our organization in their role do what's needed from a literate point of view? Are they literate enough in their role and they're serving to be able to understand the data in their own domain and also be able to talk about it and argue about it? And it's basically kind of like that concept of how can we build this up at an organization?
I really like this article, and I think this touches on many different points around this one. Let me just jump into a couple key facts that. So Sarah wrote the article from MIT. It's I guess her technical title would be like a news writer for MIT management, and great article. But a couple facts she kind of throws here in the beginning. Gartner's survey found that chief data officers have noted that poor data literacy is one of the top 3 barriers for a strong data and analytics team. I think that says a lot. One of the top 3 barriers for CDOs is indicating that their teams don't understand or don't really have the data literacy that they need to be able to produce value from information. This is a skill that is becoming more and more prevalent, and I think it's going to increasingly get more valued as the volumes of data are ever increasing. The more information you have to analyze is becoming larger and larger. So this is going to have to become a bigger and bigger skill. Thoughts?
I liked how Tommy kind of started off, because initially when I think about data literacy, right, it falls into, read, write, work, analyze, right? But to me, those were audiences. Like certain people could do certain things. And it's one of those points where I just hadn't put 2 and 2 together from the literacy standpoint in our own language, which I think was one of the foundational things that really struck me right out of the gate. Is if I'm fluent in my own language, I can read deep, I can read it, I can write it, and how proficient I am is indicative of how I speak or how I write. Or my fourth grader writes a lot differently than the college age kid. And to some degree, like the parallels are like fit this as well so well, because it's like learning a new language potentially, right? Where we not everybody needs to be fluent, right? But the more people that know how to read and write and be literate in their language, the more they can communicate better, right? And it's the same with data. So just riding that theme, and that's how like we talk about all these different areas, and we'll dive more into like what the definitions of each of these are. But just starting from that was a new thought for me around like how I thought about like increasing the data literacy within an organization.
I think they break it down into 4 areas, which and like I said, for me too, Seth, it was like, these correlate. The importance of being data literate is 4 areas: reading, writing or working with data, analyzing data, which I like that they separate those 2, and then arguing with it.
I like that one the best.
Yeah. But I think all 4 though are, and I think it goes in that order in that sense too, where you can't start with arguing. Yeah. And I really love the idea of, we all think people at our organization can read the data. right? But again, it's not just looking at the same thing in a book. It's not just like looking at the letters and the words on a page, but it's being able to conceptualize what that actually means. And this is very different from just an English language, because this is very dependent on a few factors on our role, the domain we're in. So what we're actually showcasing, this goes to the mental model and what we're visualizing. Are we visualizing it the right way? Are we putting the words in the right order, so to speak, when we're putting the report together?
Yep.
And are we communicating? And I think this is the 1.2 when it helps the business read. Like, can we write or talk about the data? Can we communicate effectively what that report's saying? Because if they're looking at this for the first time, but we can't talk about what this report's doing, well, that's going to be a hindrance to the business being able to really understand or conceptualize the data.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that one. And I think for me right now, a lot of time, I think we need to do more arguing with our data, because I think a lot of people come into looking at data with a notion of what they want the data to say. And then they start working to form the data into their hypothesis or their mental model of what that data would be, what I want you to say about that information. And I think in organizations, it gets very political very quickly when there are multiple stories of information that are floating around the organization, because everyone wants their data to look great. Well, I don't count this information because it doesn't apply to my team, all these things. And so sometimes you really actually need to have a heart to heart with the organization. Like, these are our metrics. This is what we're going to measure. And then I really like the culture that they're pushing here. Later on in the article, it talks about like why you need it, and then talks later about creating the data literacy plan. So there's like a 8-step way of 8 steps here that say these are kind of key areas that you should be thinking about when you're building data literacy in your company, because we all know we need more of it. Now, how do you get it?
Yeah. Mike, I would make one argument, though. I would say those people who already come preconceptualize what they think the data should be, I think they're data illiterate, because I don't think they've ever really read the data in the first place, because they've never looked at the data actually. No, okay.
Maybe. I mean, I think I would probably disagree. I maybe would disagree with you slightly there. I mean, I do agree at some level. There's a, but I wouldn't necessarily call you data not. I wouldn't say you are not data literate. I think you're just trying to really push an agenda on top of your data. And so I think that maybe is a little bit different distinction. Because
but then are you reading the data though?
Yeah, you can do a lot to make data say what you want it to say.
Sure.
And you can emphasize certain things and de-emphasize other things. Really, I think it comes down to what information are we like. So the biggest problem I find in all this is your company will have tons and piles of data. There's a limited amount of people, there's a limited amount of time. Using that information, what do we focus on? What is the what is, and this is like the term is escaping me here, but it's that time value order of money, basically. Is that lemon worth the squeeze kind of concept? And so what is your return on investment? Yeah, that's kind of, so if you don't think about that up front, we could be building all these fun things. We could make all these products or these whatevers. And if they're not returning real money or value, what good are we doing?
So I'll chime in on your point, right? Because I do think that it's very easy for organizations or teams to push agendas without like what we would term as like a database decision, right? But let me give you an example of that. If you have a company that is not literate, not data literate, meaning people don't generally have access to the base levels of data that can easily compile, summarize, filter, analyze data sets that is available for the not entire organization, but the teams, then you don't have the ability to be data literate, right? What it allows is teams to create their own agendas and say, hey, look, in my area, I have this number and it says I'm doing really, really good, without basing it on anything that can be validated, right? And I think in part and parcel, access to data is extremely important for any sort of literacy to be created, because you have to fact check things. And in order to come, I think, to better decision making, Mike, to your point, we would propose the opposite, which is you may have a hypothesis, but you'll let your insights and the analysis of the information before you drive the actual outcome. You won't put your outcome on top of the data to shape it and massage it in a way that
Yes.
is beneficial just for you.
Hmm?
And I think that's the big difference is
Mhm.
what we're proposing is that that increase in data literacy across the board removes the ability for people or teams or things to kind of throw shade across individuals or drive their own agendas, which aren't really based on anything.
I would. Well, yep.
So
that's
I think
it's a much better way of articulating the same thing. I was kind of, I like that. I think it's big.
so.
Very
I
applicable.
do want to lay into, like, we hit those 4 main points right in the beginning, but like
Mhm.
I want to read through those just because I think there's meaning behind them. So like her first point was read data, which means understanding what data is and the aspects of the world it represents. And to me that's a good one too, because when you throw out data as a term by itself, it doesn't mean anything, right? Like just because I can read a word doesn't mean that I understand what that word means. Think of English language, like some peculiar word that is thrown out there, and you're like, okay, I really don't know what the definition of that is, right?
Mm.
There's no meaning behind it. So
Right.
when I say data, and I think the way this article is saying data as well, it's with the added um, link of we're driving for insights, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
finding valuable information in all of this sea of data, and there are different ways we can consolidate. Anyway, second one, work with data, including creating, acquiring, cleaning, and managing it. We do a lot of that, right? So that's a lot more teams, or I should say, well, actually, a lot more people are doing it in organizations with tools like Power BI. Analyzing data, everybody's doing this, which involves filtering, sorting, aggregating, comparing, and performing other analytical operations, which in the data volumes that we see today, we're pushing that further and further into the different business units. It's not just a business intelligence thing. It's not just a big data team thing. And then to your point, Mike, where I think we'll spend a lot of time is argue with data, which means using data to support a larger narrative that is intended to communicate some message or story to a particular audience. And that's where I think there's the power of understanding and being fluent in data. That's my new term. I'm fluent in data.
I like it.
Boom, that's a shirt. Is it can, when all of the teams and things are rising together on that, I think it really can break down a lot of misconceptions that occur in teams and organizations, right? For instance, one that's near and dear to us all the time is there's you have competing priorities between front forward folks who are typically engaged with the customers. Everything is an immediate need.
Yes.
And then you butt them up against engineering, where there's a backlog and there's a process and there's things you need to do.
Yes.
If you don't have that process, though, and you aren't clearly articulating through information and data and showing the business how you're accelerating or how you're executing, when they can expect certain things, what are the SLAs, like you are clearly communicating all of that information to them, then animosity grows, right? You have this conflict between, well, I need this thing and so is not doing it for me. And what they're not understanding is, like, there's 2 resources and they're trying to build 20 reports in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Not going to happen.
Like
Right.
there's
Just not going to happen.
always going to be that conflict. But I think data and information about your areas and how your teams are executing and what that plan is, and all of those are big, meaningful steps in teams rising and understanding how the other team has to work, how they have to engage with them. It's almost, in some regards, like how you engage with different personality types in your organization, right?
Oh,
Like
it's very true.
the,
Oh boy.
the really different ones,
Yep.
right? To me, I'm the guy who doesn't like my email is 5 bullets. I need answers here. And then the opposite of that is, individuals are like, "Good morning, Seth. How are you today? It was such a fantastic weekend," and blah, blah, blah. And like 20 minutes later, by the way, I wanted to know these 5 things. And it's like, well, yeah, great conversation.
I'll stop you right there. So first, Mike has actually been huge for me for how I communicate things.
That's it. I'm done. I'm out. That's it.
So yeah, no, but like, no, you've actually helped with some of the content I've created. Like, no, don't just do bullet points, and everything's in bullet points now.
Yeah.
For a lot of things communicated, but a big point there is this goes along too with one of the words I hate now in the English language when it comes to data, and what we think is important is like getting insights with your data, like, like make it impactful. And I feel like that's just like a throwaway term now, where again, that word has to have a certain meaning around. Like, we say, well, what we're trying to do insights with data. Okay, great. Well, for whom? And I think going back to the audience and that personality, this is where the difference is, where it's just compared to the English language, where everyone understands what insights the word means, but it's very different for a organization and that different department. And yeah.
Are you saying insights is what annoys you?
Yeah. Well, we just always say is the word insights, but I don't think we understand what I think.
I understand it.
Oh yeah.
I'm data literate.
You're very data literate, but no, but insights is different for every department, right? It's like, oh no, this report's insightful because one of the bar charts is bigger than the other one. And
no, see that I think
I disagree with that.
My argument is that proves my point, right? The reason I don't like data is because I can give you a spreadsheet and it means nothing.
Right.
It can mean absolutely nothing to you, except it's got 10 columns and 100 rows in every column. And it, like, you can stare at it, and it could be, it could be OneDrive device IDs, and that would mean absolutely nothing to anybody, and build numbers. But in reality, like, for the person who understands that, hey, maybe we're upgrading all of our OneDrive devices, and I'm looking at these numbers to, go from a, 32-bit system to a 64 or whatever the case may be, like, having a little bit more information lets the user create meaning from the data, and that is an insight. I'm not talking about like the extremely long-term difficult, like, what are the questions and answers and everything we try to do in reporting. Some of that gets very involved, but it's also can be very simplistic, right? It just means you put a wrapper around data and you made it meaningful to you. That is an insight. It's not just data. And I guess that's what I try to articulate. So it's interesting to me that you're arguing the opposite of that, because that's how I make that distinction between it being meaningful versus just.
Let me put a little more context around that. Not you, but I think that's like kind of like if you look at anyone's website and they're a consultant, they're like, let's give you insights with data, and they make it sound so easy. And it's almost like the ChatGPT thing right now to me, or like the OpenAI thing, where it's such a it's almost like
there's keywords everywhere.
Yeah,
sure.
And insights is one of them. Like, listen, let's find you insights, but it's like you have to your point. It's not so much the data. I mean, it's obviously the data is a part of it, but it's that empathy, and it goes back to the understanding the business. So all these people we'll just find insights with your data. It's like, well, no, do you understand the person? Do you understand the department?
I feel like I want to define insights as a process, and it has a defined question, and it has potentially a defined result.
Right.
Something I can so to me, I think of insights. So when you said, Tommy, earlier, like the things that are insightful to different departments, I think what you, in my words, I would have said it would have been things that are useful for different departments would be different. The insight, I would say, is consistent. Like, it's the insight does not change. How are my sales? Are my sales up or down this period to last period? That is the insight. And so the action on top of that. So to me, where I think insights leads to action is how I would put that. And what the insight portion of it is, if I know sales are down 3%, and that's a red flag for me, or 10%, and that's a red flag for me, the difference, the delta of what we're looking for, that's when I need to trigger, okay, we need to go talk to our sales team. We need to figure out why there's supply chain issues. We need to understand why that number is down. So there's a reason to why that is doing something. And the goal here is, after looking at the data, what actions will I be doing next to figure out how to change the data? So in my opinion, I'm always like trying to figure out, I want the data to do what I want it to do, as opposed to I'm trying to let the data tell me something. Let me say that again. I'm trying to let the data tell me something and then glean insights from the information and then drive me to go do the next thing. That's what I want it to do. And to me, that's defining an insight. Usefulness is I may ask questions of the information in one team or another, and that may be very different. And so I think, again, when I think about putting visuals on a report page, and this is where I think this article makes a lot of sense now, is because in here, when I show you a bar chart, right, do you implicitly know what the insight is? Or do I have to do training around that on the report to help you know what the insight is? How are we conveying the insightful information, right? And so there's some techniques you can use with visualizations that you can leverage, and leveraging those techniques will make you craft a better data story. And I think this also fits very well with our last article. Seth helped me out here on the podcast that we did this one, where it was the data science article, and we were talking about I think it was like 2 or 3 episodes ago, but we were talking about like data science and how data science becomes like the emphasis for data science discovery was really about crafting the data story. The data story was so key, and by increasing the knowledge in the team to understand the data story and focus on the story of the data was almost just as impactful as doing the machine learning itself. And I feel like this is another scenario.
That was actually just last week.
It was last week, right?
191, data storytelling is the conduit of modern data literacy.
Boom, go back. There's a whole nother hour you can enjoy our banter.
We could take you all the way to lunch.
So what are some of the ways in which we can create a data literacy plan based on the article?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that stood out to me. I think having education and talking about a common language, right? Using jargon and terms, and be very direct. Bullet point lists, simple explanations, and I think being able to teach people what this language of data looks like, and I think exposing them to how they think about information really helps. And to me, that actually changed a lot of my career. This is a direct example of how I learned this. I went to a class called Delta Associates, and I became what they would have called, I think previously at the time, a black belt in data and analytics. And so what they did is they were focused on the category management industry, and they provided very specific training around it. And honestly, it changed how I thought about information and data. I was literally just popping out charts and graphs and had really no direction about what I was trying to emphasize, nor did I know how to pick out the key, we'll call it the key insights or the drivers of what is causing your sales to go up or down. After taking that class, I had a much better understanding of like, just a bar chart showing where you're at is not helpful. Now, a bar chart showing where you're at compared to where your goal is, whether you're above or below your goal, makes a lot more sense. So depending on what you're trying to measure makes a big difference. And you change what visuals you make after you learn some data literacy pieces of that. So to me, would be having your teams trained, having a common language on how you communicate things makes a lot of sense. Another good example of this is sorry. I want to give you one more example. Another good example of this is using the IBCS standard. So it's a standard for business analytics. It has standard visuals that communicate common things. Anyways, I'll pause there.
I was just going to make the point, like, not the common language thing is not just important within a team. I think it's most important across the organization. If you think about like even my organization, right? Like a lot of acronyms, right? Lots of like little key phrases or, words that only mean something to you in the business when you've been there for 5 years. Those are the types of things that like clarifying systems and like data coming from certain places, or another way, I guess, to term that from teams to other teams would be, you're not talking to people in calculated columns and measures, right? Or the model. One of the things that I think was most helpful for describing Power BI, right, to people was, think of it as, and Mike, I think you hit this. It just came up in a meeting or whatever. Like, think of it as an application that has a framework, right? Like, we have to play within this framework. So there are some things that we can't do, but we can do an awful lot, right? So be creative with your requests. Think about things. We might have to tweak them a little bit, but it kind of broadens the mind of what are the capabilities of certain things that we can do. And I think across the board, just creating the common language of what, like, the data, golden data sets, what does that mean? The meaning behind what is a curated or created set of information that people are going to consume, so that they can come into it with I think, base level assumption and understanding and meaning behind it, as opposed to, oh, it's just the Wild West and you came upon, a spreadsheet.
Mike, I really like the point though. You start with defining the organization, because too often it's, can you send that ICCB when we get the RRB and there's acronyms
and the AOST and whatever, whatever. I don't know what you're doing. You're just saying a bunch of acronyms at me. Like, let's just simplify. Let's not use acronyms. Let's go down to like the simple stuff.
But too often in larger organizations, not only do you have the acronyms, but you may have very common terms that mean very different things on different departments, like leads. Leads are a huge one where marketing defines it one way, sales can define it another way. So not only can we define things from an acronym point of view, and in a sense, can we then have the technical definition for it? So you have the business definition, then can we measure it? But is there a universal term? When we say product, then we have a product hierarchy. Is everyone define it the same way when we say what a book is, or when we say what a bicycle is? And honestly, too often, different departments, because of their role, may define it differently. So you have to start there. The next kind of stage for me, and once we have that foundation from a definition point of view, is from what we do is, like, if you know someone really well and their pain points, like your spouses, if you want to get your spouse red in the face, and you can do it in 5 seconds, right? Because
why would I want to do that?
Exactly. Well, yeah. But like,
Tommy, I never do that. I'm always trying to be pleasant. And
if you want to push the button, yeah. And and honestly, this is what I've been using this more and more when I'm having scoping calls, from a measurement point of view. When people don't know really, they're like, well, like I had someone who they're like, can we just get this Excel spreadsheet every day? And it's like, it was literally like 50 columns. And I'm like, well, what is this doing?
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. So starting from, okay, let's try to understand your pain points and how can we push the button?
Yeah.
Rather than going, well, what's insightful to you? They're going, oh, the whole thing. Like, okay.
And that's the point. People don't even know what to ask for. But again, there's multiple challenges with that, because I think that stems from a couple places. It stems from, one, I don't trust the data. I don't trust the analysis that's coming from other things. So why would you ask for all of the raw information? Or you don't know what to ask for. And you say, I just need all the data because I'm going to go pick it apart and just try and make a couple pivot tables. I'm going to copy paste some things. I'm going to do some of my own analysis offline, which is okay.
Right.
And I think you should do that. But actually, what needs to happen here is that if you're doing that kind of information, that should be a self-driven, self-service reporting type exercise. And it doesn't go anywhere until you have a gated level of, you can't send that stuff out though.
Right.
And if it doesn't come from this certified area, we're not going to go give this to executives yet until we actually really have more people look at it or eyes on it.
I don't want to move on, because I loved the analogy of like, oh, just give me the Excel dump, right? And at first, I was like a huge proponent of like, no, I would never do that. But I think that aligns to this point number 4, right? Building a culture of learning and rewarding curiosity, because there are points in time, and there still are large amounts of individuals that you have conversations with that don't know how to answer the insight questions because they're not data literate, right? So you're pushing them to say, give me what you want from an insightful report. And they're like, what are insights? What do you mean?
Right.
Like, I can just take actions off of what you're creating. They haven't thought about it in that way. So if we're creating a data literate culture and we're rewarding curiosity in them, that fits very well into the stages of report development, right?
Yes. Yes.
I need this information to make decisions off of. Okay, I can build you a report that does all these things, and they just go, I just need the data because they don't know.
Because they don't know yet.
So then it's like, hey, then we present that as, here is your data here because you need access to the data.
Yep.
But I'm going to now follow up with you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And there's a reward for their curiosity kind of thing. I don't know how you do this, but it's an idea I'm going to run with.
It's in the
like
list.
That's where fostering that sort of like, oh, hey, give me 2 weeks with it. I'm going to like figure out what are the things I'm doing with the data to come to an answer, and then we'll talk about it again, right? Or
that's point number 4.
Them. That's what I said.
Verbatim.
You guide them to the next steps, so that all of a sudden the next conversation is, okay, I've got this data, Tommy. Like, run me through your questions, right? Like, here's the questions I came with. Here's the answers I needed, and it took me 2 hours to do all of that kind of stuff. And now you're like, great, I can automate that for you, and we can just do, create an insightful report, and now you have those metrics and you know where the data came from, right? Because then you're graduating them towards not doing all the manual work that I think a lot of folks do, right? Because they just go, I don't know how to answer your question. Give me the data, and I'm going to go spend 4 hours doing this every single time.
So I think a big part of this too, and I really agree with that, and makes me think a little differently about from the data dump point of view. But I think it comes with I don't want to say guardrails, but a little bit of guardrails in terms of there's a calibration that also needs to happen rather than, and I know you don't mean this like just giving everyone all the data just at once, where for each of these departments and their roles, I think a big part of this is, sorry, my
sorry, it wasn't meant to cover Tommy's face.
Wow.
It wasn't the point.
I don't know. I guess so. That's like the hook. That's like at the Apollo.
Michael was trying something out. Sorry, producer Mike was trying something out, and it kind of ruined Tommy's point altogether. So for those of you who are listening to the podcast, I just threw up.
Are you playing me off?
I'm playing you off. I just threw up a QR code on the screen for a shirt that we're doing, and Tommy's literally full over Tommy's face. Didn't quite work the way I thought it was going to.
Restream, and I'm like, that's strange.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Tommy. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
All right. For those listening, we apologize. You have no idea what's going on. But
for those of you live, you get to have the entertainment of us.
Jeez. All right. So let's see if we can woosah and get.
All right.
Where
deep breaths.
Okay. So there's calibration, and I think this is a huge part of accelerating the curiosity, because obviously we've all done this. You can dive into data and not really try to do anything. You're just exploring. But I think a big workshop and a really big part here that's important is calibrating everyone and trying to get them to, like, most people don't know what's important to them. Like, they know what's important in their role, but they can't translate that to the data. Like, they can't translate that to a metric. And I think it's our job to calibrate, to go, to basically ask, and I've asked people, like, what gets you fired? Basically, like, starting with the extremes. No, but seriously though, like
the negative.
What
maybe a little bit much there, Tommy.
I'll say, what gets you promoted and what gets you fired, and start with the extremes. Seriously though, like, because if someone has,
I would lead with promoted first. What could you do that would get you promoted? I would probably lead with that one, and then I would say, then I would maybe fall back if they don't give you good answers. What gets you fired
right now? But if you have no one, you have to start, like, you have to calibrate them and then slowly work your way back to go, okay, so if you were at a call center and you made no calls, okay, we'll start there. So let's work our way and kind of understand, like, well, what gets someone to contact you? What gets you get awarded? And you start, now you're calibrating someone. Okay, now they're getting a good idea of the context of like their ranges, not just the volume of number calls.
Yes,
but they like when I make more calls than last week. Great. Now we have some context.
Yes.
And I think we have to do our job. And I think what we can do to build up is to get people to calibrate how they, in a sense, conceptualize what's important to them. And I think that's a huge part of this grow up story.
And I would also agree. And I think I want to point out another, if we're kind of talking about things that you can do to help grow your data literacy across your organization, I think another one that I find is very relevant, and this is actually echoed in the Microsoft Power BI adoption roadmap documentation, is point number 7 that's made in the article by Sarah. She says, make sure your leaders are involved. So whether you're talking Power BI, whether you're talking data literacy, someone in the organization has to somewhat champion this and understand, send your executive sponsors the Harvard Business Reviews, send them the information that says the better you are able to engineer and think through data, the more capable your organization will be. Because if you don't have leadership buy-in, you're not going to spend time to let people train on it. You're not going to encourage data curiosity. You're not going to get people to just explore and do their own things. You're going to be so rigid with everything, and you lose. There are so many people on the ground floor of working with information that they know what to do, and we're not able to listen to them or let them accelerate to find impactful things. And I think having those leaders engaged and involved and be able to have that mission enabled for the rest of the organization is huge. And again, I don't think you will be as successful with Power BI or your data literacy unless you have some sort of executive sponsor pushing and championing this and understanding the value of this is the new way we're going to have to do business.
It's part of the investment.
It's part of the investment.
And I think that's a big part people forget. They're like, well, we bought Power BI and we have a data analyst, so why are things not working? You're gonna need spend a little more dough and spend a little more time. And I think that's what usually gets failed in the whole project, where people buy Power BI or they're like, we have 5 data analysts, but nothing's happening. Well, there's time that needs to be spent, and like soft skill time that really needs to be spent.
I would agree with that one.
Agree with all those things. So I do want to lean into the other areas, right, of the article itself, because we've been kind of picking and choosing a few of the frameworks. But
yeah,
I think she refers to Jain, Jain, like in a book in here. I forget, but there was a 3-step program or framework that was implemented in Google and some really large organizations around how do you create data literacy or increase it. And one is defining what those data literacy goals are, right? Kind of like our OKR framework conversation we had in the last one. But measurable, right? Like create goals for these things that you should see marked increases in decision making across the organization or in teams, et cetera. Assessing employees' current skill levels, which is also a pretty big point in the the implementation points she makes, which is start with a baseline of employee skills, right? Like you got to figure out where people are at. And a lot of the people that we're going to be interacting with to raise the data literacy levels are the frontline employees, the ones that are dealing with the customers, the sales folks, like that may not spend a ton of time in these realms of information the way that we do, and maybe less literate, right? So you have to start with the baseline employee and kind of work your way backwards, and then laying out appropriate learning paths. And those were the 3 in that framework. But we've touched on like what 8 of the 8 afterwards, right? Distinguish between data literacy and technical literacy. And I think this is a really hard one for folks, because I've fallen into this trap too, where we're talking more about the tool and the technical aspects of like I just said, calculate columns, measures, dimensions, models, yes, those are all parts of creating frameworks of information for people, but they shouldn't be the driver of the conversation, right? It's the business value. It's the information that's coming through the reporting that people are making decisions off of, that should be the focal point of these conversations. And that's what that point is making. Start with the baseline employee skills, use a common language, which we discussed, build a culture of learning and reward curiosity, which is kind of what I plugged into with that paginated idea and forward. Remember that everyone learns differently. This one, like, how do you work around this one though? Like if you're developing a training path or like teaching people data literacy, like, is that just under, like, do you have to come through with different approaches of trying to reach out and communicate the same thing?
That's a good point. I would say it goes to there's a minimum level of, regardless of your role, that I think you're trying to get to. And I think that's getting out of the data skeptic stage. of where at least organizations or those departments, even if they learn differently, you can do videos, you can do other things, but there's a context at least of, I understand the data is valuable. And I think at least getting to there is like a bare minimum for those people who maybe struggle a little more, or is taking them a little more time to at least get them out of the data skeptic like mindset.
Yeah. And maybe this isn't necessarily, I was just reading the blurb underneath that. Not necessarily that you're changing what you're communicating. It's just the styles, which is an obvious point now that I think about it, right? Like the 3-hour seminar is not best for everybody. Maybe record it and in chunks and have people go back and do that. Transcription would be fantastic, right? Where people can search for different aspects of it, different ways in which we're communicating or training people. That makes sense. And then that define success. Everything we talk about, you have to, and that's part of like
I like that define to success.
The first one of the framework, right?
Yep.
Defining what are the goals, like what are we trying to do in many different areas, because it's kind of like, well, OKR again, if the objective is increase data literacy, what are the key results that we need to build? Because it's going to be a large spectrum across them. And the definition of success is, are we meeting those, key results?
And you should be using metric scorecards to track all of it.
Yeah,
right.
Because that's the best tool in the world.
Right, yeah.
And if you didn't know that, listen to our last podcast.
And then go check out Viva Goals. Buy that too. Just spend all your money on Microsoft.
I freaking love the OKR framework, even from just a workshop point of view. Of it just the ability to say, oh, we're trying to build a data culture. Okay, so how would you know if it worked? And that's basically the OKR framework of like, okay, what would show? And I think that this is a good point. And this is a little difficult. It's always difficult to do the key results sometimes because we're building data literacy. Well, what would happen? Are we getting more usage? Like, if we're going to workshop right now, what would be some of those key results that you would say if you were building your data literacy?
Sorry, are you trying to put me on the spot?
Yeah.
Mike,
absolutely.
Mike, go.
I'm looking at both of you.
If we're going to talk about data, what are the key results of data literacy?
Well, yeah. Obviously, this is off the cuff, so don't take we can do a better job if we have more time.
Well, I mean, I think what defines some success around are you data literate, I think is thinking through, like, can you articulate an insight? Can you build a visual? And can you craft a story with some of your information and data? I think another part of this is like, how do you do it?
Yeah. How can we measure the success? Like, obviously that's subjective, or not subjective, but how can you say we've done this?
I mean, I think it's slightly subjective because you're building a report, you're doing something, but like you get feedback on the report. So, people vote with their eyes, people vote with their time. So if they're spending time in your report, regularly looking at it, they're voting in some way, spending time on those type of things. So if you do a good job crafting the insightful information, I hopefully at those upper echelon reports that are regularly getting looked at, right? You're getting feedback from executive leaders who are looking at your report or your data, and you're hearing words like, we can trust this. This is helpful. I can take action on this. Like so to me, it's like almost you have to do something, listen to the feedback, see what you get back. Now, if it's a report that's more widely used across the organization, right? Building those kind of reports, does it get usage? What's the usage metric look like? How many views are we getting? Do you have links in your report to the documentation? And are people going to that documentation? So like how people are interacting with what you build, I think matters here.
Huge.
So those would be things that I would kind of try to quantify, like try to put some numbers around what is a definition of success in this area.
Yeah, and now that Mike gave me 2 minutes to think,
Google,
mine, Mike.
You ChatGPT'd it.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Tommy, like key result. Do we have a glossary of terms? Are we built like? Did we add?
How many do we have?
Add 50 terms in the last 30 days? Success, right? Did we add 60 or 90 or 100 in the quarter?
How many data sets have been documented and logged inside the system?
Right.
Quantity, number.
Do we have, if we want people pursuing if we want to
build them, they will come.
If we want to build a culture of learning and rewarding curiosity, do we have a process? Do we have a process that people can follow? And are they who's following it? Is anybody following?
Yeah.
Right? Because there should be a measurable thing of like, yes, we know that This was the introduction. We gave them this data, and then we had a meeting 2 weeks later, and now we have a work item to go create a report, right? How many cases of that are people pursuing that and providing feedback? Well, we have 20. Okay, your key result was 15, success. Training classes, are they built? Are you presenting them? When will you be?
How many people attended?
Like, did we build them in 30 days? Did you produce and train people and record them in the 60-day time window, right? Mm-hmm. Those are key results. Yes, no. And then what I would say is probably continued meetings with leaders. So you have leadership engagement. And then in those meetings, you should, like, the key result is, do we have at least 3 actions coming out of there that are turning into backlog things, like things that we're going to continue to enhance or improve our program for the organization. And I think that's a success, right? So those are the types of things, though, that, like, for folks who are driving at key results, like, those are quantifiable things.
Mm-hmm. Numbers, measurable. Yeah,
right.
I like it.
And then on the outside of this, all of those should align to larger level goals that you should start to see changes within the organization, or, I'd have to think about it further, but essentially those would roll.
It's a good 2-minute answer.
Yeah. It's a great 2 minutes. That's pretty good.
Are you kidding? Yeah.
I like it. We can run with that.
Well, I think we're about at time, and this time is our new segment called "What Does ChatGPT Say?" So I've already teed up the question. We have ChatGPT confirming or denying what we've just talked about for the last hour. So this is the fun segment of "Are we right according to ChatGPT?" So today's lesson is how do I learn data literacy? And so from ChatGPT, it says you need to understand the basics of data. Start by learning the basics of how it's collected and how it can be used. I think that's pretty solid. And then you need to learn about your data analyst tools. Many tools are available for analyzing data, such as Excel, another tool, Python, and I'll add one, Power BI, ChatGPT. You got it wrong. You missed one. Dumb thing. And then learn statistical concepts. Statistic concepts are essential for understanding and interpreting data. You need to have there are many online courses and tutorials you can. I like that one, honestly. We're not talking statistics a lot here, but like Tommy's on the jam on that one. Tommy agrees. Practice with real world data. Once you have a basic understanding of data, the tools, and your statistical concepts, try working through real world data sets to gain practical experience with data analysis and interpretations. Here's a great point to interject. Workout Wednesdays. Workout Wednesdays is a data challenge where they give you a data set and you absorb that information, and then here's the visual I want you to produce. And then you have to think about how to engineer the data from raw form into a visual that is telling you something. So you're studying with data experts. You're using real world data samples. They're kind of curating a lot of it for you. Removing the hardest thing about testing out things is finding a decent enough data set to be able to use on top of your report or whatever you're going to build visually. So, like, having stuff that's kind of already pre-groomed for you is incredibly helpful. And then the last one here, point number 5, join a community and listen to the Explicit Measures podcast because it's spot on.
That's amazing.
It is spot on. Wow. Listen to the Explicit Measures podcast because attending workshops or taking online courses give you more in-depth knowledge and practice from experts. ChatGPT, you got 4 out of 5 right. So I'm very pleased. Once again, you've impressed me with your answers and responses. And with that, we'll kind of take a wrap here. So thank you all for listening to the Explicit Measures podcast. We really thank for your time. We are here to promote Savage Data. Data, however you like to say it. But as we close out today, you can go check out our newest merch on the merch store, Savage Data T-shirt.
Can you define Savage Data for me, Data?
Savage, define it?
Savage.
It's everything I do. I always build cool. Savage Data. Yeah, exactly. Heck yeah.
Great.
Yeah, you have to just listen
Another
to it.
Another one of my favorite words.
So,
new age term.
We thank you all very much for attending the podcast. I hope you got some entertainment out of this. I hope it's a little bit fun. We really appreciate the community. Everyone on chat, awesome. Thank you so much in chat. It's super active. There's tons of stuff going on. Really, thank you so much for doing that. It's been really engaging to listen to you guys talk and chat there. Loved it. Our only ask, if you found this entertaining, if you had a little bit of fun here and you enjoyed all the banter that we do on the podcast, we really appreciate you just letting someone else know. Tweet it out, send it on LinkedIn. We really like your feedback, and it really helps other people engage and find the content as well. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you, community. You are awesome. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You'll find the podcast anywhere they're available, Apple and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe. You can listen to every other episode, and make sure to leave a rating on Apple. Leave a comment. That would be huge for us. And if you want to join the conversation live to understand what these QR codes we're talking about are, join the conversation Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7:30 in the morning Central on YouTube and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.